beast bipeds. Welcome to a Saucerful of Spookiness. I am your host, Count Eyegore Fugli. Tonight I present for you a terrifying tale of insane ambition and perverted science, a true story of a traumatic event that transpired on this very vessel. We have been marooned on a crippled spacecraft on this primitive mudball called Earth for many years now. The insane culture we are trapped in has driven some of the crew into severe psychosis, so we decided to hold weekly meetups in the main lounge to maintain morale. It was at the most recent booze-up that someone realized that Professor Earl Grey was missing, and we soon sussed that he had not been seen for several weeks. After due consideration, and a few more stiff ones, we decided to form a deputation to investigate exactly what had happened to the silly old duffer. The four of us took the elevator down to the deepest bowels of the ship. Roz brought a torch, Skyzer took her multispectral sensor, Shadeser packed a pump-action shotgun, and I had Willoughby, my trusty cricket bat. Upon reaching the main entrance to the lab complex, Roz used his command override to unlock the door, and it slid back to reveal a long, dark corridor. The air hung heavy with the acrid stench of ozone, ammonia, and WD-40 as we entered the chilly corridor, lined with rows of doors. The multispectral sensor klaxon suddenly activated, indicating heat signatures behind one door at the far end, and so, with grim apprehension, we set off to face the unknown. Roz soon located the open button, and the door slid back, only to get stuck halfway. The pale pool of light revealed the floor was covered in a sticky, translucent green substance, and the clammy air that wafted from the pitch-dark room stank of formaldehyde and soggy dog. We cautiously stepped into the laboratory, our feet sticking to the tacky green goo. The wandering pool of Roz's torchlight illuminated long rows of huge glass specimen jars, each filled with multi-hued liquids that bubbled and gurgled, overflowing the containers. The roiling, dark, dubious fluids momentarily revealed partial glimpses of hideously malformed bodies that writhed, twitched, and convulsed within, and mildewed contraptions atop each jar would randomly belch foul clouds of fetid odors that made us retch as we sticky-stepped our way deeper into the laboratory. Roz approached one jar and shone his torch directly into the seething, roiling maelstrom within. Instantly a swarm of bloodshot eyeballs with flagellum-like tails whipping behind them appeared, frantically jostling each other and thudding against the glass. We shuddered as one and continued our progress to the far end of the lab. Skyzer was muttering angrily about the whole lab being a health and safety nightmare when something suddenly silenced her. There was something else with us in that chamber of horrors, something moving around in the dark, making a faint whirring sound and a gurgling growl. Roz's torch frantically flashed around the abyssal gloom, desperately trying to pinpoint the source. Shadeser cocked his shotgun, and I heard the grin in his voice as he snarled, locked, loaded, and ready to kick butt. Skyzer reminded Shadeser that, although the results of such experiments certainly were extremely disgusting to look at, nonetheless these were actually usually found to be mostly harmless. Then we saw the thing, lurching out from behind a jar, a blinded koala bear with long, flailing tentacles trundling unsteadily towards us on squeaky caterpillar tracks. The pitiful abomination had two bloody sunken pits where its eyes had been. Its jaws snapped and spat behind a beard of red-flecked foam. One of the flailing tentacles slimed against Skyzer's ankle. She screamed hysterically, "Kill it! Kill it!" Shades are obliged and swiftly dispatched the grotesque creature with a blinding, deafening blast. Roz sighed heavily. "You do that again, Shader, and I'll ram that damn thing up your eye sideways." And twist. Once our senses had recovered, Roz ran his torch over the ravaged remnants of the crazed koala. The limp tentacles twitched spasmodically under a pulsing fountain of oily, deep purple ichor that spurted from the grisly, truncated neck. We resumed our grim expedition, giving the gruesome beast a wide berth. I gave it a smart thwack with Willoughby as I passed, just to make sure it knew it had been dealt with. When we reached the far end of the lab, the door was locked and the override had been disabled. Roz sighed. "Okay, Shader, just this once." We all held our ears and looked away as Shader took out the lock with his shotgun. We pushed the door aside to reveal another immense pitch-black laboratory. The air was pungent with the heady aroma of purple kush and Parma violets, the floor covered with a slick, shiny brown substance. Roz shouted Earl's name. His shout reverberated around the cavernous space, but answer came there none. So we gingerly edged forward into the dark. The lab was filled with rows of long benches, each covered with a chaotic jumble of test tubes, beakers, pipes, wires, and myriad little metal boxes. Then the meandering beam of torchlight fell upon a truly gruesome sight. Bunsen, Professor Earl's erstwhile lab tech, lay sprawled face down in the gangway, his arms and legs unnaturally disarrayed, his tattered lab coat streaked with scorch marks. Roz turned Bunsen's body over, and we gasped at what had befallen the fateful lab tech. Bunsen's mouth was fixed in a silent O, his eyeballs pulled back deep in their sockets, his pallid, waxy skin shriveled and stretched parchment thin over his skull. Skyzer ran her multispectral sensor over the body and said it appeared that every last drop of Bunsen's bodily fluids had been violently drained. Shader remarked that, judging by the look on Bunsen's face, they must have been drained via his posterior sphincter. Then we heard a faint gibbering coming from one corner. We slickly slid toward it and soon found poor old Earl, tightly curled in a fetal ball and trembling fitfully, his darkly stained lab coat hanging in shreds. Roz grabbed Earl's shoulder, asking how he felt, but the professor reacted with a piercing but puckering scream that chilled us to the very marrow. Earl was ghastly white, sweat coursing in rivulets down his face, his lips convulsed into a hideous rictus, eyes rattling around in their sockets. Skyzer swiftly administered a hypo-spray tranquilizer, and soon Earl's hyperventilating slowed, and he turned to stare at us with horror-haunted eyes. He pointed a quivering finger at one bench, on which stood a small object covered in a black cloth. Earl grabbed Roz by the lapels and sputtered, "He saw me! He saw Bunsen, and now Bunsen's burned! Don't let him see you!" Earl mercifully lapsed into unconsciousness, and with cold fingers of fear clutching at our vitals, we all turned to regard the sinister, secret something on the bench. And, well, to cut a long story short, we found this.
I see